Well. It's cute.
What?
Because it's a well, shall we?
There's one thing Uncharted 3 Drake's Deception can be commended for. Naughty Dog's 2011 release is even more ambitious than Uncharted 2, seeking to push the boundaries of epicness and playable cinematic set pieces to the max. But sometimes one can fly too close to the sun. And to be honest, it doesn't take long for Uncharted 3 to start feeling shaky. From the very first level, in fact. Uncharted 3's major goal seems to become even more globe-trotting than Among Thieves. As such, we start in London, with Nate and Sally meeting a person named Talbot in a bar reserved specifically for bold people. Talbot is interested in purchasing Francis Drake's ring, but conflicts arise and we get into a bar brawl. Uncharted 3 from the get-go wants to showcase its updated melee combat system. From a technical perspective, the fights look amazing. Enemy body physics properly interact with the environments. Nate can contextually hit mooks using objects around him. There's special grappling sequences, some of which can be initiated by using the new grab move added to the hit and counter from Uncharted 2. It is definitely very technically elaborate and looks great. However, Uncharted 3 wants to make sure you see all the animation and contextual intricacies it has on offer. As such, melee fights aren't quick 2-3 hit jabs possible with a counter in there like in the previous game. They are at least twice longer with a pretty good chance of having to engage in a grappling QTE. On its own, this already has several trickling down effects. The first one being that more often than not, it is actively disadvantageous to utilize melee in firefight scenarios, since while you are fighting, enemies are still shooting at you. The only exception are the still fist finishing animations that happen when you weaken a bad guy with some shots beforehand, and there are a bunch of cool new moves that were added for Drake. Then, even in purely close quarter fights, due to Uncharted 3 wanting to prioritize smooth cinematic blending, animation cancelling is not really a thing, and enemies wait until your current move is almost over before they can attempt hitting you. Combined with a prolonged melee fighting time, especially against the brute type of enemies, this can look quite ridiculous, let's say. This is worsened by a returning issue from Uncharted 1 you're going to encounter fairly often: increased amount of enemy reinforcements in combat scenarios. That's already annoying enough in shootouts, but in melee fights it's particularly frustrating to see another wave of bad guys jump down from someplace above, like in an arcade brawler. Uncharted 3 is not an arcade brawler. Its type of melee gameplay works against 2-3 enemies, but more than that, and it just feels repetitive. In any case, after escaping the bar, Nate and Sally get subdued by one of the goons, Charlie Cotter. Talbot arrives with the main antagonist of this game, Marlowe. Conceptually, she's the most interesting adversary we have seen in the series so far, plus she clearly has a history with both Nate and Sally.
Hello, Victor.
Kate?
Still wallowing in the gutter with your protégé, I see. Not very dignified for a man of your age.
Should have known you'd be behind this. Oh, careful now. Wouldn't want you to melt.
Same cocky little shit. So fearless. I wonder what you're really afraid of. Not bullets or blood or broken bones. No. You get off on all this, don't you? Cheating death. Or not.
No.
Mr. Sullivan, I won't harm your precious boy. I merely want what's mine.
Marlowe takes Drake's ring, which we later learn is fake with the real one remaining in Nate's possession, and then Charlie shoots our two heroes. Obviously, everybody understands that the game is not just going to kill either of them out of the blue like that. But for a semblance of suspense, we get a flashback to Nate's teenage years. Uncharted 3 feels pretty bad for Sully being totally left out of the loop in Among Thieves, so he decides to make him and his relationship with Nate the main focus of the game. As a direction, that's absolutely fine, but Uncharted 3 adds such a far-reaching flashback where Nate meets Sully as a teenager and the latter essentially becomes his mentor, that as a result their entire relationship in both Uncharted 1 and 2 suddenly feels weird. In Uncharted 1, Nate even was willing to admit that maybe there is a chance Sully works together with Charles Dolman. In the context of Sully's mentorship not existing yet, that was fine. But now it's strange that this thought would ever cross Nate's mind about such a father figure. Similarly, unlike Uncharted 2, Sully never feels too old for the shit happening in this game, even though he has to go through way worse ordeals. Though for what it's worth, Uncharted 3 tries to address this particular one.
If you're gearing up for one of your "I'm too old for this" speeches, spare me.
It also addresses some other changes, like Nathan this time being the obsessive one instead of a reluctant hero who thinks of running away when things get too difficult, while the usually more gung-ho Elena is the person who wants to back out. But this change of dynamic is also alluded to.
Come on, admit it. You love all this as much as I do.
No. No, not anymore.
Really? Huh. Okay, well, why don't you just, walk away?
Oh, me? Me walk away. That's funny.
After all, Elena had an unsuccessful encounter with a grenade in Uncharted 2, so can't blame her for wanting to participate in grenade-less activities. While Nate's flashback exists to showcase how long he's been searching for this game's particular treasure and why it has personal importance, so the newly found obsession would make sense. Teenage Nate's ultimate goal is to steal Sir Francis Drake's ring. Due to his age, don't expect any shooting. There is going to be a lot of platforming, which weirdly feels like something closer to Uncharted 1 than 2. The game's level design does attempt to have multiple small alternate pathways to reach your destination, something that's present even in the Cartagena flashback as a way to make levels feel less linear. But it also has a lot more sudden camera shifts into static or otherwise uncontrollable shots than previous games. So maybe because of these changed principles, the internal decision-making process at times can freak out. It's not as bad as in Uncharted 1 where Nate often just does whatever, but there's going to be enough whoopsies that it's going to feel annoying, especially in stuff like linear chase sequences where a single mistake might lead to restarting a checkpoint.
Gotcha, you little shit! You're done, kid!
It is during this flashback we discover that Sir Francis Drake was in possession of not only his signature ring, but also a very fancy decoder, one that needs the ring to work. Marlowe is after both the ring and the decoder, while Sully, as her employee with benefits, is helping her out. Well, until she raises a hand against the teenager that is, then the contract gets promptly terminated.
Catherine!
Who do you think you are, boy? You're nothing but a filthy, cast-off little beggar. You're not fit to touch these objects.
The hell do you think you're doing? He's just a kid.
Stop him!
Sully helps Nate escape with the ring, but the decoder remains in Marlowe's possession. And this is where the treasure of the episode is introduced. The time it took for Sir Francis Drake to cross the East Indies doesn't add up, and Nate has deduced that Drake had a secret mission from Queen Elizabeth that might involve huge amount of undiscovered gold. Of course, by now, we as players are probably aware that it's not going to be just as simple as that. But due to connection with Nate's supposed ancestor Francis Drake, as well as how Marlowe holds on to an important piece for decades and wants to take Drake's ring away, finding this treasure becomes Nathan's lifelong mission that his pride just wouldn't allow to let go. But if the ring is a key to the decoder, why did it have coordinates to Drake's coffin and journal? Why wasn't that information hidden through the decoder? And why did Nathan give up the ring so easily when he knew the decoder was out there? Obviously, this whole concept didn't exist in the first place at the time of Uncharted 1 and 2's development, but this is why mid-series flashbacks are tricky, as such a contextualization can lead to questions. At any rate, the game jumps back to the present day, revealing that Charlie Carter was actually in cahoots with us. All this was a ploy to get Marlowe out of their base.
Oh, God. Bet you were gonna put a silencer on that thing.
Sally, you've got no sense of drama.
We then meet up with Chloe, who has been tracking where Marlowe and her thugs are hiding, so we could retrieve the decoder. And this is where we start encountering more and more problems with Uncharted 3. It starts with little things, like instead of the writing being effective and laconic, it often feels repetitive and redundant.
Nate, just who are we dealing with here?
Charlie, who the hell are we dealing with here?
No, seriously. Who are these people?
The collectible treasure hunting is less enjoyable than in Uncharted 2 because Drake's deception, instead of an abstract bling, puts the objects themselves in the world. And while they do have a glow to them, it's just not as noticeable. A lot of times you have to wait or activate specific triggers before the game allows you to progress. For example, while searching for Marlowe's secret hideout, you can find pressure plates for a car, but nothing will happen until you have had a conversation regarding tire tracks, and only then will the pressure plates be useful.
Hey, over here. Look at this.
Tire tracks. Still wet from the rain. Looks like the car turned here. Hey, check this out.
You also start seeing the game take control away more often, like for example arbitrarily limiting your movement to just walking, which can be annoying at times.
Up this way.
Quietly, Nate.
What?
This place is really starting to give me the creeps.
But the biggest problem arises after Nate and his companions inevitably get into a firefight.
Shit! It's a trap! They're here! Take cover!
Regrettably, shooting in Uncharted 3 is way worse than in the first title, where the problems lied more so in mechanics being basic, but otherwise they were perfectly functional. In this game, however, there are active problems with the functionality itself. Just the core act of aiming feels floaty and somehow delayed. Then, once again, weapons feel all the same, like each one is a pea shooter. Enemies often have absolutely no stagger reaction to getting shot. The damage is there and blood particles too, but they just don't care. Heck, sometimes they don't care about headshots. So just on a core game feel level, shooting in Uncharted 3 is sadly not satisfying at all. But that's not the extent of combat issues. Drake's deception adds a seemingly useful feature, the ability to throw back grenades. It requires a certain skill, you have to press the button at the correct moment. The timing window is still pretty wide, so you're going to throw grenades back more often than not. Now here's what happens when you can just throw back the items that try to force you to change position. You don't have to change position and just stay in the same cover. And for the most part it's beneficial to stay hidden as mooks are suddenly more accurate again. They seem to also have more health while at the same time being dumber than in Uncharted 2. Sometimes enemies will try to flank you, but for the most part they're going to take a direct approach from the front, making themselves easy targets, though sometimes unstaggerable due to lack of reactions on getting shot. Plus, as mentioned before, Uncharted 3 combat encounters tend to have a bunch of reinforcements, leading to a feeling of fights lasting far longer than they have to. And that is if we don't mention smaller issues like the run and gun spray being ridiculous. Some weapons seem to have it on purpose, which is fine, but in general it's very difficult to actually hit anyone when shooting without aiming. So, after experiencing the disappointing shooting mechanics, Nate and company escaped not only with Francis Drake's decoder, but also T. Lawrence's journal and a map showcasing Drake's secret journey to Arabia. And here I must say that Charlie is a fantastic addition to the cast. Riding in Uncharted 3 might be uneven, but when it works, it really works, and can make even heavy exposition scenes truly engaging. Just see for yourself.
Well, the map proves it. Drake didn't screw around in the East Indies for 6 months. He sailed straight through and headed to Arabia.
Right?
But here's where it gets interesting. You see this mark? This is John Dee's signature.
Who the hell's John Dee?
John Dee, one of Queen Elizabeth's closest advisors. Everybody knows that.
Yeah, he was a great mathematician and navigator. Way ahead of his time. He's probably the one who invented that.
Seriously into the occult. I mean, like a really creepy dark
Yeah, see,
way.
he signed all his letters to the Queen with this symbol, meaning he was her eyes.
The original 007, you see, look, 007.
Not really that relevant.
So it was John Dee who sent Drake to Arabia.
Yeah, it looks that way. Dee and Elizabeth.
And Walsingham.
Great, but what for?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And this is where T.E. Lawrence comes in. See, before Lawrence became Lawrence of Arabia,
Great film.
he was an archaeologist. And even when he was just a kid, he was obsessed with history, everything to do with knights and the Crusades. And he traveled all over, documenting every Crusader site he could find. It's all in here.
All right, you've lost me completely, kid. What the hell has this got to do with Drake?
I'm getting to that. See, after the war, Lawrence said that if he were ever to go back to Arabia, it would be to search for this place he called the Atlantis of the Sands. Now, the legend crops up over and over again under different names: Ubar, Aram of the Pillars, the City of Brass. But the story is always the same.
Oh, city of immeasurable wealth, destroyed by God for its arrogance, swallowed forever in the sands of the Rubel Khali Desert.
Right here.
Well, I like the immeasurable wealth part anyway.
How are we going to get across 600 miles of impassable wasteland?
It's in the middle of the desert. So technically, it'd be about 300 miles.
With another lost city to find, the team to try and get ahead of Marlowe splits up and follows separate clues. Charlie and Chloe go to Crusader Castle in Syria, while Nate and Sully to one in France, where beyond the traditional platforming and shootouts, we're going to encounter puzzles. Uncharted doesn't have a particularly great track record with them so far, but this is actually going to change. The very first full-on proper puzzle you encounter might give the wrong impression. It's a follow the journal instruction, you just have to rotate statues as per images. But this time, it's not a case of every puzzle being like this. There's actually progression. For example, in the following one you have instructions of what path you need to take through various tiles, but they're not shown in the same configuration as the tiles on the floor, so you have to do some correlation. And after that, there's a puzzle where you're going to deal with missing information. This is something I've been clamoring for since the first Uncharted. The series never needed complicated puzzles, but something to just think a little bit is great. Uncharted 3 has more puzzles than the previous 2 games combined, which still is not a huge amount, but now they work for pace-breaking purposes and some involve very creative visuals. These puzzles tend to be placed in chunks, so you have considerably long segments without any combat, just exploration and uncovering mysteries. and honestly, one can't help but feel thankful for not having to engage in prolonged combat scenarios outside of set pieces. I specify this as within set pieces, combat can actually be fun, and Uncharted 3 wants to one-up its predecessor not only with the amount of set pieces it has, but also their length and scope. The first big one actually happens in France. Nate and Sally find in a crusader's grave one half of an amulet hinting towards the location of the lost city. Nathan rubs it onto paper, luckily so, since Talbot ambushes them and takes away the amulet, promptly leaving when weird, extremely deadly spiders fill the chambers. Things don't get easier after escaping the thousands critters though, as it turns out Talbot has ordered his men to burn the entire place to the ground. And in classic Uncharted fashion, the mooks are going to try and kill you while everything around is burning. This set piece is absolutely spectacular. No wait, let me rephrase that. Every set piece in Uncharted 3 is absolutely spectacular. They're all visually stunning, creative, adrenaline-pumping romps. The wow effect is pushed into overdrive. However, it should be pointed out that such elaborate direction requires nudging control away from the player, and that comes at a cost. That being, things breaking down if during gameplay you happen to not do the exact thing the game expected you to do at a particular moment. This sort of seeps into the overall lack of polish one can feel in Uncharted 3 when things don't go exactly the way the game expected, which, this being an interactive experience, can happen quite a lot. I do have to mention that as a whole, Uncharted 3 looks amazing. Sometimes you forget that this is a PS3 game, and it should be noted that the PS4 remaster the footage is from has minimal graphical changes outside of resolution and frame rate. It is indeed a technological marvel that probably bites off more than it can chew. Uncharted 3 wants to create an impression that its characters are actual human beings, which can be difficult given that sometimes the hair looks so shiny like it's made out of plastic. But regardless, the main point is that to create lifelike characters, the amount of animations not only Nathan but other important NPCs have is incredibly big. So big, in fact, that the game regularly doesn't understand how to properly blend all of them, both for Nathan and other NPCs, resulting in some hilarious visuals. Still, more often than not, it does all come together, and when it does, the set pieces of Uncharted 3 are incredibly entertaining, to the point that you might ignore how the story falls apart more and more after the front segment. Ironically, the game itself is somewhat confused about everything that happens.
It almost were.
I gotta say, I'm losing the plot here.
So much of Uncharted 3 just goes unexplained. These spiders from the Crusader Castle, you will also find them in the Syria Keep, alongside the second half of the amulet leading to Yemen, and in a tomb there, the spiders will be present as well. And that's it! They're gone! You won't see them anywhere in Ubar beyond the moment during a hallucination. There's no explanation why the crawlers are in these specific locations related to the city, nothing! Then there's Talbot. The game practically beats our heads with how mysterious he is.
Shit.
He's gone. How in the world?
Beyond the more grounded utilization of hallucinogenic darts to mind control his enemies, Talbot is specifically shown to disappear around corners, to literally come clean out of a direct gunshot wound in the chest with not a single bloody spot on the crystally white shirt, and ominously placing tarot cards in the pockets of people he's messing with. Well, a single tarot card to be more exact. Because the game forgets that Talbot is supposed to be this super weird, mysterious person, and then never does anything like this again. He keeps using all the darts and then runs away from us several times, and at the end goes down in a one-on-one fistfight. All the mysterious illusion shit is not mentioned. Oh, and Marlowe with Talbot set on fire the tower Charlie was on, so he is forced to jump and breaks his legs in the process. That's it, he's out of the adventure. The new and quite honestly awesome character we've been spending half the game leading up to, getting to know better, is just unceremoniously thrown out in the middle of it all. No more Charlie, or Chloe for that matter. In Syria, we also learned that Marlowe's organization is actually centuries old, manipulating the powers that be through fear all this time. But we never understand what they actually want to achieve by getting the main treasure from Ubar. Later we hear the legend of King Solomon imprisoning an evil jinn with a vessel of brass and casting it into the basin at the heart of the city. This in turn poisoned the water, making everyone hallucinate like crazy, eventually leading to the city's downfall. It's not clear why Marlowe is interested in the jinn or whatever it is so much, because we know she has access to very effective hallucinogenic mind control tools already, and Talbot is a wizard or something. Sure, the brass vessel works wonders. Nathan, after drinking the water, sees his enemies in flames possessed by the jinn. But we've experienced the effects of Marlowe's drugs on Nathan, and they're effective enough already. Marlowe even has access to information, revealing that Nathan was raised in an orphanage having absolutely no relation to Sir Francis Drake. The entire core of Nate's identity is fake.
I suspect I know you better than anyone, Mr. Drake. Of course, that's not your real name, is it? But we won't dwell on that. Mother commits suicide. Father surrenders son to the state at the age of 5. Entrusted to the St. Francis Boys' Home. It's also Dickensian.
This is exceptionally interesting and can have huge ramifications on understanding of Nathan as a character and why he keeps doing what he does. But the game never goes anywhere with it. The worst offender is probably the 4 chapters in the middle of Uncharted 3, which collectively take up shy of an hour and a half of our time. A pirate who we see only once as a hired gun for Marlowe right before this section captures us and takes to a ship graveyard in the middle of the ocean. The pirate says he has captured Sully, though in fact he didn't, and at the end of it all we sink his cruise ship and then the water takes us to the same city we were kidnapped from.
How convenient.
Convenient is putting it mildly. And all this time, there's absolutely no plot progression, no character development, no villain relevancy as the local antagonist is introduced as quickly as he is dispatched. You could literally cut out all those 4 chapters and nothing would change. And yet, the irony is that these 4 chapters collectively are the best part of Uncharted 3, I kid you not. Are there problems? Yeah, some combat arenas are still too prolonged with more reinforcements than it would have been desired. A full armored mini-boss who can be defeated only with explosives is more annoying than he is engaging. But stuff like that is all over the place in the rest of the game too. What these ship levels have though is a great variety of situations with open combat arenas where you can hide underwater, having to do climbing while shooting, chasing boats to get on the cruise ship and then hopping from boat to boat, followed by the whole sequence of escaping the sinking liner, which is probably the most impressive one in the game, and that's saying a lot. Issues with core mechanics aside, it's cinematic action gameplay at its best. Which makes it all the more disappointing that these levels don't matter even a tiny little bit for the game's story. At least we have some fun levels, I suppose.
Son of a bitch!
At the same time, one can't help but feel if maybe it would be better had the budget and manpower that went into creating the ship levels gone into something else instead that would make Drake's deception a more coherent story. For all its flaws in writing, pacing, story structure, Uncharted 3 still excels at character moments. To push the story forward, the game has estranged Nathan and Elena once again, though it is made clear that the two were either engaged or married before the events of the game, but only Elena wears her ring for now.
Nate.
You're still wearing it.
Yeah, I am. It helps in this part of the world.
Oh, really?
Seriously? Don't flatter yourself.
Hey, She's still learning.
Oh, yeah. Apparently it helps in this part of the world.
What does that mean?
I don't know.
When Nathan gets back, all exhausted, after the pointless ship segment, to find that Elaine is setting up to rescue Sally, who indeed has been captured only by Marlowe and not our pirate friend, we get an incredibly touching character moment.
Okay. I could really use a glass of water, and then we ought to get going.
No. My contact at the airport says that the plane isn't taking off until dawn. In the meantime, just try to get a couple hours sleep.
I don't think that's a good idea.
Come on. All right? He'll call if anything changes.
You're really gonna do all this on your own, huh?
For Sully? Yeah.
I like the way you think.
I know.
No, I mean, that's...
I know what you mean.
I'm sorry.
I know.
What a fantastic scene, honestly. But Drake's deception doesn't have time to focus on character moments and relationships anymore. We spend a huge middle segment in an unrelated ship sequence, and now we have to rush to actually finish the main plot. We get on a plane, boom, fight on that plane, boom, plane crashes, boom. We go through the desert for days without food or water, boom. We fight an abandoned village where Marlowe's men just happen to be stationed and where our resident local ally Salim just happened to attack just when we need help, boom. We follow the convoy that's heading to Ubar, boom. We're at the entrance to Ubar participating in the most annoying combat encounter in the entire game where we have zero visibility and yet enemies are more accurate than ever, boom. We're inside the lost city, boom! Everything gets destroyed, boom, boom, boom! Jake says something about not having anything to prove, boom! Melee fight full of quick-time events against Talbot, boom! The ring from Nate's fake ancestor is lost to the sands, but it's okay, boom! Because all this time Sally kept Nathan's engagement with her wedding ring, boom! Everyone is happy now, boom! Sally somehow managed to acquire the plane that's similar to the one from Uncharted 1, boom! We're done! The finale is specifically contextualized in such a way that this could work as the end to the Uncharted series if there had been no more future games. But if we were to take a look at it from that perspective, then it's very underwhelming. Tons of plot points raised, most of them abruptly cut, character arcs are solved in seconds. This... well, despite all the amazing action set pieces, one can't help but wonder, is this it? Well, I suppose no if you owned the game on a PS3 back in the day, because Uncharted 3 has its own multiplayer iteration. Like with Uncharted 2, Uncharted 3 multiplayer was never released on PS4, while on PS3 the official servers have been shut down. However, at the moment of writing this, it is possible to play Uncharted 3 online should you so desire, thanks to fan efforts. In my Uncharted 2 review, I said that in a game like this, having pretty basic rule sets is actually an advantage. Uncharted 3 though is not content with multiplayer being just a side mode, and wants it to be its own thing with a full-on progression and customization system, as well as unique mechanics created specifically for multiplayer. I am not sure how to feel about that though. In theory, of course that sounds great, but I don't think all these inclusions work. For example, your weapon configuration is now loadout based, and there are various weapon mods you can get for money you earn. This sort of leads to a situation where players are not at the same playing field, which forced Uncharted 3 to introduce power plays. Advantages that can be activated for the losing team. But it sucks to feel like you're winning and then get penalized for that, so there's also medal kickbacks now. Special abilities that can be activated once you receive enough medals, if you're skilled enough. So we get to a situation where the multiplayer gameplay differs quite considerably from the single player one, and all the new mechanics don't seem to be balanced enough to lead to a consistently enjoyable experience. That's why I said the way Uncharted 2 handles multiplayer tends to work better for such side modes. Admittedly, I don't have a lot of personal experience with Uncharted 3 multiplayer, and I do know that it has its own fanbase, particularly thanks to much more advanced and elaborate co-op missions than Uncharted 2 had, but overall it feels like the effect of its direction is going to be pretty hit and miss, depending on your tastes of course. Still, it's unlikely anyone who's not a hardcore fan of the multiplayer already is going to play it, since you can't really experience Uncharted 3 online without going through a lot of hurdles. And thus, we get to rank in the game with my Stasocritic scoring system. Stasocritic is divided into 5 different categories of various weights, each having scores from 0 to 10 that are assigned depending on specific criteria. We start with design, the most important category with a weight of 4, as ultimately that's what primarily influences the quality of a game. I'm going to assign a 7. Drake's Deception has tons of set pieces, and they're all at the very least great, but most are, quite honestly, amazing. Puzzles are also really good too and fit perfectly the kind of game Uncharted is. And the shipwreck liner levels are absolutely fantastic. However, they and so many other parts of the game are let down by boring shooting, poor enemy reactivity, not particularly great AI, encounters that often feel unfair with mooks having incredible accuracy even in low visibility situations, melee fights that last too long, and other issues. That being said, Uncharted 3 has a considerable amount of breaks between combat, and while platforming and exploration might not be perfect, they at least let you rest a bit from the most problematic parts of the game. So considering the quality of levels, which is still pretty high, I think we can state that as a whole, Uncharted 3 is a solid title. But when it comes to emotions, which has a weight of 3 because personal feelings are pretty much as important as the perceived quality of the game itself, I will have to assign an 8. This might feel weird given my score for Drake's Fortune in the same category. Purely as a game, Uncharted 1 is often more frustrating and not as engaging as Uncharted 3. That much is represented in the design score. But Drake's Fortune had a solid plot structure, smooth environment progression, sensible character arcs, and the narrative beats worked. All those aspects propped up the entire experience. Drake's Deception, quite frankly, doesn't have that luxury. When the story stops making sense, when you don't understand how and when a lot of plot points are going to get resolved, when the game throws characters in and out of focus on a whim, there is nothing to distract you from segments that don't quite work, like a combat arena full of sand in your face where enemies just keep coming and somehow they hit you from miles and miles away even though you can't really see them yourself and you just sit there shooting uninteresting weapons, throwing all the grenades back that explode before even reaching their target. In moments like these, you can't wait for everything to end as soon as possible. Next, we have Cohesion, a category with a weight of 2 that's about how well all different parts of the experience are connected together. Look, Uncharted 3, among other things, has 20% of the game that's absolutely cuttable without any effect on the rest of the experience as is. I will have to assign a 3. It's a collection of gameplay segments, some work, some don't. I appreciate the themes Uncharted 3 tries to tackle, those of obsession, fear, but it just doesn't really gel well. This concerns Context 2, a category that's about narrative, plot structure, character arcs, and everything else that provides context to the player. I'll have to be honest, Uncharted 3 is a very strong candidate for a score of 1. There's tons of setups with zero payoffs, character cast members with a lot of focus disappear in the middle of the story, those who should have a lot of focus appear in the middle of the story only for a little bit, calling the character arc resolutions abrupt is an understatement. But I will assign a 3. First, because of the potential. You can see how the story can work. In fact, flashback recontextualizing previous games aside, it does work until about Chapter 7. The first Spider Storm appearance is when everything starts going off the rails. And second, even though very often the writing is surprisingly repetitive, Uncharted 3 has a lot of character moments that when taken on their own are very poignant. It's just those moments don't quite fit well in the overall structure. That's a shame. And finally, we have aesthetics. I will assign a 9. The game retains the strengths of Uncharted 2 in terms of visual and musical identity. Acting is amazing too, of course. And let's be absolutely fair, it's an incredibly ambitious title when it comes to the look and feel. But this ambition doesn't always work out. Bugs very often seep out of the woodwork due to the game not being able to handle the complexity, and that far too often leads to a feeling of being unpolished. Which brings us to the final Stasocritic rating. After all scores and their weights are taken into account, it's going to be 64. Now, it should be noted that Stasocritic uses the entire range of its scoring system, with extremes on both ends being more difficult to get to on purpose. Most games out there, realistically, are going to land somewhere between 50 and 70. Games in the range of 60 are nice. I can recommend them with a caveat that you should be aware of the issues you might encounter and decide for yourself whether you're willing to live with them. I guess, as a follow-up to Uncharted 2, Drake's Deception felt it had to up the ante even more to be considered a worthy sequel. In comparison to Drake's Fortune, Among Thieves was bigger, grander, there was more of everything. It seems like Uncharted 3 wanted to be the same in comparison to Uncharted 2. And it does succeed when it comes to set pieces. I would go as far as say that some are truly unforgettable. Trudging alone through the desert, biting on a crashing plane, escaping a sinking ship, on their own, they're an absolute blast. But Uncharted 3 leaves a hollow aftertaste. Characters get shafted, plot points forgotten, foreshadowing doesn't lead anywhere, and worst of all, there's entire chunks that even the game itself practically admits are absolutely useless. Even when everything is resolved, you don't feel like anything is at a more stable place than it was at the end of Among Thieves. Sometimes, being bigger can lead to a more compelling experience. Other times, everything can crumble down under its own weight.